everybody, this is Mike Balzano, publisher of R&R and the Experience Events. Welcome to Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. This is episode 14, and we have a really, really special guest this week, a gentleman I met about a year ago, and he's one of the more classy people in this industry. He's got another long intro coming because he's done a lot. He's a certified mold assessor, certified mold remediator. He's a Class A general contractor, master plumbing contractor, master roofing contractor. More importantly, he's a husband, father of three, a multiple-time grandfather, published songwriter, which I really want to talk to him about in a little bit, speaker, a published author, definitely proud man of God. We've learned that, a motivator, and the God is most important, obviously, but for this conversation, the most important thing is he's the executive director of NORMI. Please welcome Mr. Doug Hoffman. Hi, Doug.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate this. This is going to be really enjoyable. I always enjoy talking with you, and especially talking about the experience.
Well, NORMI's been a big part of the experience for a long time. You're one of our biggest sponsors, if not the, and you've been so instrumental to help me get my feet wet in this now as we're heading towards Chattanooga. So I thank you.
Well, it's mutual, I'm sure.
You know, a lot of times we start from the beginning, as people say in these. And now I noticed you've had a lot of accreditations in Florida, but you live now in Louisiana.
Yeah.
What were you born in Florida or no?
I wasn't. I was actually born in Ohio, but we moved to Florida when I was 7 years old, and so I grew up in Florida and went to college in Florida, got married in Florida, lived in Florida until about 2002, after we became empty nesters.
Yep.
I had actually started an indoor air quality business, and it actually kind of almost went national pretty quickly in 1995. So in 2002, we were looking for a place to move out of Florida, had considered a couple of different places, but had quite a bit of business in Louisiana. And so we decided that we would actually sell our house. We had an apartment in Louisiana and we had an apartment on the beach in Florida. And for 3 years, we traveled back and forth. 3 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 3 weeks there, 2 weeks here. And we did that for 3 years until I finally built my house in 2005 and settled here. Love it. The culture's fantastic. The food is phenomenal. Got a great church family. Easy to get in and out of in the central part of the country for travel. So that's how we got to Louisiana.
That's interesting. And yeah, I know I saw a really funny quote you quoted on one of your websites saying you're in the heart of SEC country your whole life, but you don't really care about sports. You want to do everything with it.
I know. So I had somebody tell me not long ago, Mike, he said, man, you must be a wife's dream. You don't hunt, you don't fish, you don't love sports. What do you do? So,
well, I'll tell you what you do, and I'm going to jump around a little bit, but since you mentioned that, I love the fact that you not only have you written a very famous book we'll get into later within the industry, but you're a songwriter. You've got a bunch of published songs.
Yeah. I in my spare time, and I mean this as humbly as I can, I just really enjoy studying the Bible and teaching the Bible. And so since I was probably in my 20s, I serve now as a pastor of a congregation here in the Louisiana area. And I do a lot of teaching, a lot of studying. And I actually started writing songs in 1983, 84, and have some published. And so, yeah, it's kind of fun.
I've learned so much. This is the 14th episode here of this show. And every week I learn so much about this industry, man. You peel the onion back a little bit. There's so many interesting people. And, Michael Pinto, we had on a while back. He's an ordained minister as well. And, Mrs. Lavender owned an arena football league team and things like that. And it's just fascinating to get to know the people outside of our industry and what they're doing. You're certainly no different.
The fun thing about this to me is, and I think when you look at the base of this, what really drives a lot of the guys in this industry, certainly the ones that I'm associated with, is their passion for helping people. And I really believe that comes from God. And I think that the interesting is that the money follows, obviously, and that's nice. You have a nice living. But the point is that think about all the people that you help every single day. And to me, that's the real pleasure of what we do.
Boy, Doug, all 13 people I've spoken to before you echoed that. And I used to ask that question. I stopped asking it because it was the same thing. I got into this industry to help people. And it's just not only beautiful, as I've said, if that's your why and to do something, you're going to be successful. Period. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. I think that's
Well,
great.
that's exactly right. And that's the fun. That's the fun part, isn't it? It's hearing the stories about
Yeah,
people who are living better lives because of something that you helped them with.
indeed. Now you started a long time ago as a contractor and business owner about 40 years ago, right?
Yeah, I
What was
did.
we touched
I
on that a little bit, but can you really go on your that journey on the business side?
Yeah, so it's funny because my dad was a plumber. He wasn't a plumbing contractor, but he was a plumber, worked every day hard, just like a normal trades guy would. And when I was 13, he said, "I'm going to teach you the plumbing trade. You may never use it, but you will never go hungry." And so over the summers, I would work with him doing rough ends and setting pipe and setting fixtures, and I just learned the plumbing trade. So that's what I did when I was a kid. And then, of course, after I went to college, I thought I wanted to go into sales or something else. I did that for several years. And when my third child was born, I decided, you know what? I think I'd like to get back into the construction industry.
Hmm.
So, to my wife's chagrin, Mike, I became a plumber's helper, became a journeyman, and then got my contractor's license, and then then from there I started building homes. So got back into the construction industry. So yeah, been doing that a long time.
Well, I mentioned, ran through all of your accreditations at the start, and yeah, you definitely have the entire gamut of the industry covered. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with what you did. And you said your wife's chagrin, but we talk about for a couple other people about just there's still a skilled worker shortage, and people all want to go to college, and that's fine. I did that too, but boy, there's nothing wrong with going that route,
Yeah.
and you could do pretty well, and it's helpful. So it's
Well, my
great.
wife's chagrin was mostly based on the fact that my salary was cut
Yeah,
by 2/3. you
yeah.
know, plumbers helpers don't make a lot of money, but
They
she got to
yeah.
know our mortgage company very well.
They're like that, but you again you stayed the course, and now everything's going great after
Yeah,
some
it is.
investment.
It is. And it gave me such a great foundation. We always talk about the difference between us and the IICRC. We've got a great relationship with them, of course, but they really come from the water restoration side, which is great. We need that. If somebody has a water event, they got to
Mhm.
deal with it, dry it out, worry about the mold. We come from the building science side. And
Mhm.
because we come from the building science side, uh, the only people who need our solutions are people who breathe, because now we're talking about relative humidity issues. We're talking about air infiltration issues. We're talking about a lot of things that people have issues with, regardless of whether they've ever had a water event or not. So
Yeah,
I think we do kind of fill in the gaps in some ways for the industry.
I think that's a great tagline. I've heard your friend Lance was on here a couple of weeks ago too, and he's yeah. We're not that important unless, of course, you breathe. Then we might be
Yeah.
kind of important to you. Hey, when did you
Yeah.
start working with Normie, by the way?
Well, actually, I created NORMI in 2004. In
Ah,
2003, I had gotten a call. I was living in Louisiana back and forth, but I'd gotten a call from the contractors board in Louisiana in 2003, Mr. Moreau, and he said, "Listen, I read your book." He said, "You obviously know something about mold. We're
mhm.
putting a licensing law in place. Will you come work for the state and teach on the licensing law?" And I said, "Thank you very much. No." I've been self unemployed all of my life. So if you'll allow us to create a trade association where we can actually support these guys in the field, then we'll do it that way. So that's how we formed NORMI in July of 2004, to support the Louisiana licensing law, but primarily to support the guys in the industry. And since then, every month we're doing free continuing education training for our guys.
And again, I do a little research on that. That was a big miss by me that you created that. That's very impressive, and I apologize. But now speaking of the book was Mold Free Construction. And
Yeah.
what drove you to write a book about that though?
So, no offense to any builders, but what I learned when I was a builder was that a builder will do anything that you are willing to pay for. But for the most part, they're not. In most cases, a builder is not going to build the best house he can possibly build in regards to mold free or reducing the possibility of microbial growth. And so, what I did was I decided to write this book for homeowners.
Mhm.
And so, it's a step by step process. If you were building a house, starting from the way the house is laid out, with the foundation, the exterior, the interior, all of that. How do you build a house that would be microbial or mold free? And of course, that doesn't mean there won't ever be any mold in it. The idea is that how do you seal it up with reducing the air infiltration issues, reducing the moisture intrusion issues, taking care of making sure that you're doing the best you can from an indoor air quality standpoint. And so it's basically a checklist type book, chapter by chapter.
Mhm.
It leads to the end of the book, which is a checklist that they can then go to their contractor and they say, this is the house I want to build. And then when he says, okay, it's going to cost you X number of dollars, then you can make the decision as to whether you want to do it or not. But it's obviously would be building way above minimum code or minimum standards. So that was the impetus. That's what got me excited about writing the book, was being able to address homeowners, people that were interested in building a home.
And in the media and content, especially, we have a term called evergreen content, which means that you could write it and it doesn't have time specific. And the fact that you get the second version of this out in 2018 tells me that it holds the test of time. What you wrote in 2004, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think the first draft I did in interesting story there, Mike, but the first draft I did in 1998, I decided it had 13 chapters. I was going to write a chapter a week. That was my goal, was to get it done in 13 weeks. And I did. I
Okay.
was able to meet that goal. But then was interesting because you're right. Once I got it finished, the final version didn't really need any revisions until about 2016. I wanted to add a section on insulation because there have been so many questions about spray foam insulation and non-vented crawl spaces and so forth. So I added that chapter and then did a few other revisions. But yeah, it has stood the test of time. And the interesting thing about it to me is that it's been incredibly helpful for remediation contractors,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just for somebody that's building a house. It's if I were going to put something back, pour it out, and then going to put it back, if the way it was built initially was the reason for the problem, then I certainly need to put it back in the right way and fix those problems. So a lot of remediation contractors use it as kind of a guideline for repairs as well, and room additions and those sorts of things.
That's incredible. That's great. That's great. And like I said, it stands the test of time, and people are still using it today. And I found out today is the impetus for somebody approaching you launching a NORMI way back when. These
Yeah.
days, I know NORMI specifically for IAQ, and only because we've done, we're proud sponsors of NORMI TV this year, the experiences and things like that. Boy, this is a silly question. Why is IAQ important these days? I sent that to you. I'm like, I know it sounds silly, but let's
Yeah.
talk about it.
Well, I tell you, the thing that's the most exciting thing to me about where we're headed is back in the probably 2006 or 7, when we first started talking. Of course, we put mold in the context of indoor air quality because you can use mold as a surrogate basically for other indoor air quality issues. You fix mold problems, you're fixing indoor air quality issues.
Mm-hmm.
But what was interesting was back then in 2006 or 7, the small percentage of the population was what was considered environmentally sensitive. And yet today that population has grown to between 20 and 25% have the potential to be environmentally sensitive. Michael probably talked about that,
Mm-hmm.
Pinto, a lot. So all of a sudden now people are talking about mycotoxins. And a lot of those can become airborne, biotoxins, endotoxins, a lot of those sorts of things. So I wrote an article several years ago about, it was called Look Up. And if you want to know what's on your surfaces in terms of quote unquote dust, look at the supply registers. I was in a restaurant this last week and I looked up and I said, Neva, my wife, don't look at the supply register. It was just filthy, and stuff that's in the air is dropping down, on our surfaces. We don't think about that the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's on the surfaces also becomes airborne. And since so much of our nutrition comes from the air we breathe, I think it's probably one of the more important things that we can do to address our health.
I think, and we all, I think I said it's dangerous to say we can all agree on something these days because it's rarely you could say that. But after the pandemic, I think we could all agree that we're all wiping off surfaces, and that had its importance. Really, what we learned was the problem was in the air. correct? And
Yeah.
all the problems going through the air. And NORMI's
Yeah.
done such a great job at educating people on this.
I talked to somebody the other day about this, Mike, somebody that I'm actually doing an assessment for. And it was interesting because they had never thought about this. They talk about viruses and how long they can actually stay in the air. And you remember that there was that whole discussion with COVID. How long will it actually stay in the air if you sneeze? And what wasn't considered is what about all those little submicron particles that are floating around in the air that you can't see? And
Mhm.
what happens if you sneeze and a particle of the virus gets on that little particle that you can't see?
Mhm.
Now it's on a surface and it's floating around. How long is that going to stay suspended in the air? So I think when you really get down into the nitty gritty of air quality, there are so many aspects of it that you can address and you can improve the environment, and that is going to have an effect in most cases on our health and the way we feel.
It's a topic that is at the forefront of, really should be the forefront of everyone, scientifically or not, in
Yeah.
society these days, keeping everything clean, protecting the duct work. I spent a long time with a magazine called Snips, which dealt with duct work, and IAQ is a big deal. So I have a little head start. I don't know what you know, but I had a little head start on this. And
You do.
hey, by the way, good time to mention that we're going to be heading to Chattanooga in about just a little bit. The next experience is going to be April 3rd through the 5th at the Chattanooga Convention Center. Get your tickets. There's plenty of spaces. We have booths available, and you certainly can come even the last minute to attend. We have a great, great, great agenda. I'm really proud of the agenda, led by you, sir, and Lance and Mr. Pinto and everything. We're so happy. You're gonna see, I think about 5 or 6 sessions from various people in NORMI,
We
hands-on.
do. Yeah, and we've got a one day that's virtually the whole day is hands-on session.
Yep.
We're going to build some containment, do some negative pressure, talk about air washing. A lot of guys don't talk about air washing. They don't really understand how that works. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about utilizing our PRV 24K, which is a sanitization equipment that can be used during the air scrubbing process. So it's a fun time to be able to talk about a lot and demo a lot of different new ideas.
How long have you been? I know you've worked with Larry for a long time as well. How long? When was the first experience you attended? Do you remember or no?
I, I do remember. In fact, I was invited to attend by Larry because he was actually forced, he says, to invite me. He didn't know who I
Mm,
was,
okay.
and so anyway, I was invited to the Atlanta show in the spring, and I went to the Atlanta show, and we sat down and started talking, and we really hit it off. It was like he understood where we were coming from, that we were coming from a different side of the industry. He was very familiar with the ICRC, but didn't know us. And really, from that point on, we just kind of became friends. And so that's how that relationship started.
Yeah, and you've been a big part of it ever since. Any good, that'd be funny. Any good stories you remember from your time at the experience, things that happened, experiences per
Well,
se?
well, they're all unique.
Yeah.
Every every time it's unique. I think one of the things that I've said over and over again to our team with our members, and like I said, we meet with them every week or every other week now with our continuing education training, and we tell them if you're going to go to one conference, industry conference, this is the one you need to go to. And the reason you need to go to is because we have fun there, but more importantly, you actually do get to experience what it's like to hold the equipment, what it's like to actually use the equipment, get to know people that you really need to know in the industry. I think the networking side of this is huge. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's been exciting to me is that I think we were able to bring to the table, and I don't want to take full credit for this, but as you know, the mold industry is split into two professions, into the remediation side, which is the
Mhm.
trade side of it, and the assessment side, which has traditionally been the industrial hygienist side of it. And now, of course, there's whole licensing for the certified mold assessor. So you've got the assessment side and the remediation side. And I think we were able to at least be instrumental in bringing the assessment side to the experience. And that I think it fills a gap in the industry because even remediators and restoration contractors need to know how to do assessments. And so that's one of the things that I think we're going to be able to talk a lot about at the experience coming up in Chattanooga.
No, that's great. And as I said before, you're going to be You're gonna be on stage a lot, and I'm very proud of that because we need to make sure we keep this going. One thing that was hammered into my head as we made the transition to BNP Media owning these events was hands-on. And to your point, fun, family, but hands-on especially. This event in spring is different from the fall because in the fall, it's a traditional 3 days of agenda that you go to most conferences you attend or expos. The middle day here is all going to be extra hands-on. We have the restoration pavilion, the cleaning pavilion, and a whole day of hands-on. So get down there, and we're very proud of, like I said, we're very proud of the agenda, and you're going to learn something if you come to our event. You're going to have some fun. What in your opinion, outside of the hands-on, why should people make the way to Chattanooga?
Well, I think the thing that I really think is probably the most valuable thing is just the face-to-face contact. You know, we live in a text world and an email world, and I just frankly, I know I'm going to sound really old, but I just don't think there's anything like an eye-to-eye, shake the hands, talk to the guy. Typically, any kind of strategic alliances we set up, I will absolutely not do that unless I've actually met the person, had dinner with the person, you know, and I think that's the thing to me that is the biggest draw to an event like this. And in Chattanooga, it's so easy to get to. I mean, it's a great location because I mean, I don't know the way the population sets in the country, but I know for us, it's incredibly easy to get to. And to me, that is probably one of the biggest benefits, Mike, is being able to sit down eye to eye and talk to the people that you want to do business with.
No, I've told sales reps who I've been managing for many years that you know what, nothing bad ever comes from making a client call and seeing your client face to face. They may not sign a contract that day or do business, but you've furthered the relationship, and that's so important. And that's just on a sales standpoint. But what you said is even more important in life. Just you need to just. I hate to keep mentioning that darn pandemic, but I mean, I think we learned that too. I mean, we gotta be safe. I understand. I'm not saying don't be safe, but being alone for too long isn't good for anybody. We need to be together. That's where not just the experience, that's where all conferences and expos come in handy.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's so convenient and easy to get to and affordable. Oh my God, you guys have made this thing very affordable.
It's it really, it's not so bad. We have a lot of good things coming up. We're doing these Shaw tours. For those who don't know, 75 people are going to get to tour Shaw plant on April 2nd. The day before. There's still some tickets available. So definitely go to rnrmagonline.com and sign up for that. Sign up for the show, then sign up for that. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, I can't say enough how happy we are to be partners with you and Lance and Michael, Dr. Michael and Normie. Have some
fun.
I
thank you for the effort you guys put in this. I know there's a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes. There's a lot that we see, but I know there's a whole lot we don't see. And I just appreciate you guys continuing the tradition because I love this show. Like I said, it is the one that we want to be involved in every year.
Excellent. Well, that's a good place to stop, I would say. So please make plans to attend the experience April 3rd to the 5th in lovely Chattanooga, Tennessee. You can register through our website, rnrmagonline.com. You can find this and all R&R videos and podcasts on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Please follow us if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a quick review. We'd love to hear from you. And also, please follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. A very special guest to our, very special thank you, excuse me, to our guest today, Mr. Doug Hoffman. This is Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next week.